Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses. Those words would echo through Officer Mason's mind long after the day was over. Words he spat in arrogance, never realizing they would mark the beginning of his downfall. That morning, Ava Johnson, dressed in simple civilian clothes, walked toward the tall marble steps of the county courthouse. Her briefcase carried only case files and a quiet confidence, the kind born from years of serving justice. But before she could climb those steps, Mason stepped into her path, blocking her way like a gatekeeper of prejudice. "Another one of you sneaking in again," he muttered, his lip curling. She barely had time to respond before his open palm cracked across her face. The sound echoed off the courthouse pillars. Her head snapped to the side. Papers flew from her grasp like startled birds, scattering across the stone steps. Mason's hand clamped around her throat. "Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses," he hissed again, pressing her against the cold wall. Within seconds, metallic cuffs snapped around her wrists. Several officers gathered, their laughter sharp and cruel. Phones came out. One officer recorded as another jeered. "Guess she thought she could just walk in here like she owned the place." Through the haze of pain, Ava's eyes found the bronze plaque above the courthouse doors. The Honorable Judge A. Johnson presiding. 20 feet away from her own courtroom, the woman who had once passed judgment on hundreds was now being judged by the very system she had protected. Inside, the narrative shifted. Officer Mason straightened his uniform, rehearsing his lie in his mind. He'd done it before: spin the story, take control, and walk away the hero. The system always believed the badge. "Your Honor," Mason began confidently as court proceedings opened, "I was conducting routine security protocols when I encountered a suspicious individual attempting to breach courthouse security." He gestured toward Ava, seated at the defendant's table, her cheek bruised but her posture composed. The defendant became erratic, refused to identify herself, and resisted when I tried to verify her documents. The temporary presiding judge, Judge Allen, nodded thoughtfully. "And what did you observe, Officer Mason?" Mason smiled slightly, the arrogance seeping through his polished words. She was dressed inappropriately for court and carrying what appeared to be stolen legal files. When questioned, she became hostile, used profanity, and threatened me. From the gallery, Officers Davis and Walker exchanged knowing glances. They'd heard this performance before. Same script, different target. She even claimed to be someone important. Mason continued, mockery dripping from his tone. "They all do. Lawyers, senators, judges, anything to dodge accountability." Judge Allen leaned forward. "Did she resist arrest?" "Absolutely, Your Honor. I used only the minimum necessary force." The lie slid from his tongue as naturally as breath. The courtroom stenographer's keys clattered rapidly, immortalizing every falsehood. In the back row, a young clerk frowned. Something about the defendant's calm composure unsettled her. Officer Davis, the prosecutor, Sandra Taylor, called. "You corroborate this testimony?" Davis stood, posture crisp. "Yes, ma'am. I witnessed everything." The defendant tried to enter a restricted zone. Officer Mason handled the situation professionally. "Any alleged assault?" asked Judge Allen. Mason's jaw flexed. "Your Honor, I used only what force was necessary. The defendant's injuries are self-inflicted, the result of her own aggression." He pulled out his phone, conveniently playing a video that began halfway through the confrontation. "Here's partial footage. My body cam malfunctioned this morning." "How convenient," Ava murmured, her voice steady. Judge Allen shot her a warning look. "Anything you'd like to add, Ms.?" "Nothing, Your Honor," she said softly. Her tone was calm, but her eyes, sharp, unyielding, told a different story. Mason pressed on, emboldened. "This is another case of someone playing the victim card. She trespassed, resisted, then cried discrimination when caught. I've seen this trick 100 times." Sandra Taylor nodded sympathetically. "In your 15 years of service, have you seen similar incidents?" "Too many to count," Mason replied. "Some people think they're above the law. They weaponize racism to avoid responsibility. His words landed like poison, and a few heads in the gallery nodded. It was a familiar story, the kind they'd seen on television and chosen to believe. The defendant claims she was going to work, Mason added, using air quotes. But she had no ID, no proof of employment, nothing. Officer Walker stepped forward. Your Honor, she was carrying sensitive documents, possibly stolen case files. We suspect identity theft. Judge Allen looked intrigued. Go on. Yes, sir, Mason said quickly. These files bore judicial seals and confidential data. No ordinary citizen would have access to that kind of information. His confidence grew with each lie. The irony, however, was thick enough to choke on. The stolen documents were her own. Mason concluded triumphantly. This is another calculated attempt to exploit the system. She plays the race card, hoping for sympathy. But not in my courthouse. Silence fell over the room. For a moment, even the hum of the ceiling fan seemed to fade. Sandra Taylor cleared her throat. The state recommends charges of trespassing, resisting arrest, and assault on an officer. Judge Allen nodded. Understood. Officer Mason, your professionalism is noted. At the defendant's table, Ava Johnson sat motionless. Hands cuffed, eyes calm, expression unreadable. She looked every bit the woman they believed her to be, until the faintest smile curved her lips. She wasn't beaten. She was watching. Every word, every fabricated detail was being recorded, not just by the stenographer, but by her own iron memory. And soon, the very man standing before her would discover that the woman he had humiliated was far more than a name on a docket. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was the calm before justice struck back. When Judge Allen finally turned to the defendant, expecting trembling excuses, Ava Johnson rose instead, slowly, deliberately. The sound of her handcuffs clinking was the only thing breaking the silence. Thank you, Your Honor, she began, her tone composed yet commanding. I appreciate the opportunity to address these allegations. The courtroom shifted uneasily. Something in her voice didn't match the picture Mason had painted. A voice too calm, too trained, too familiar with the walls of justice. First, Ava continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. I'd like to clarify several factual inaccuracies in Officer Mason's testimony. Her words sliced through the room like a blade. The prosecutor frowned. The stenographer paused. Even Judge Allen's hand hesitated mid-note. According to his statement, she said, I was trespassing on government property. But the sidewalk in front of this courthouse is a public space. Citizens have a constitutional right to be there. That's not trespassing, Your Honor. That's existing. She took a breath. The courtroom leaned in. And as for the claim that I was carrying suspicious documents, Ava gestured toward the evidence table, where her briefcase and papers lay in disarray. Those are legitimate legal files, case summaries, memoranda, correspondence. All part of my professional duties. Judge Allen squinted. Professional duties? And what profession would that be, Ms.? Dr. Johnson, she corrected gently. And I'll get to that shortly. The faint smile returned, mysterious and unnerving. Mason's posture stiffened. A flicker of unease crossed his face. Ava continued, her voice steady but charged with quiet authority. Officer Mason also testified that I used profanity and resisted arrest. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right concerning any verbal response during that unlawful assault. However, she leaned forward slightly. Any reaction I had was a direct result of being physically attacked without cause, warning, or legal justification. The young clerk in the back sat upright now, her mind racing. Something about the defendant's cadence, her legal fluency. It was too practiced to be coincidence. Now, regarding the body cam malfunction, Ava said, the steel in her tone unmistakable. Your Honor, I believe there is extensive video evidence that can clarify this entire situation. Judge Allen blinked. Video evidence. Yes, Your Honor. This courthouse has over 40 high-definition surveillance cameras covering the main approach, the entrance, and every hallway inside. The county maintains automatic backups for all officer body cam footage, regardless of claimed malfunctions. The color drained from Mason's face. He hadn't thought about the external surveillance systems. He never did. The courthouse had eyes everywhere. I formally request, Ava said clearly, that this court issue a preservation order for all electronic data recorded between 8:45 and 9:15 a.m. this morning. Security footage, body cam backups, and any phone recordings made by officers present. Sandra Taylor jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. The defendant cannot issue evidentiary requests without representation. Ava turned to her calmly. Under the Sixth Amendment, pro-se defendants have the constitutional right to present evidence in their own defense. And under Brady v. Maryland, the prosecution is obligated to preserve potentially exculpatory evidence. The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Allen cleared his throat. Ms. Dr. Johnson, you seem rather familiar with courtroom procedure. Have you had formal legal training? I have some experience, Your Honor. Ava's tone carried a quiet confidence that sent ripples through the courtroom. She gestured to her briefcase. As for my supposed unauthorized presence, the file on top contains my daily court calendar. You'll see that I was scheduled to appear here for official business starting at 9 a.m. The bailiff, Clark, frowned and stepped forward to retrieve the document. But as he read, his expression changed from confusion to shock to outright horror. His eyes darted from the page to the woman in handcuffs. Your Honor, he stammered. I think there's been a mistake. Ava continued calmly. Officer Mason testified that I claimed to be someone important. I never said that. I tried to show him my identification. He refused to look. She reached carefully into her pocket. Your Honor, may I approach the bench? Judge Allen nodded hesitantly. Ava pulled out a leather credential wallet and opened it slowly, revealing the gold embossed seal of the federal judiciary. For a moment, no one moved. Then, Bailiff Clark whispered it under his breath. Oh my God. Ava looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding about who exactly Officer Mason assaulted this morning. She turned the credentials toward the courtroom. Even from a distance, the seal gleamed unmistakably. My name, she said softly, is Judge Ava Johnson, presiding judge of this courthouse for the past 23 years. The gallery erupted. Gasps. Murmurs. Sandra Taylor went pale. Mason's knees almost buckled. Judge Allen's mouth opened, then closed again, color draining from his face. Court will recess for 15 minutes, he croaked. The gavel struck, echoing like thunder. In the small holding room beside the courtroom, Bailiff Clark's hands trembled as he fumbled with the cuffs. Judge Johnson, I can't believe this happened. I'm so sorry. It's all right, Clark, Ava said quietly, rubbing her wrists. You didn't do this, but I need your help. Anything, Your Honor. I need you to go to my chambers and bring me my black judicial robe, the one with the gold trim, and my gavel. Yes, ma'am, he said, hurrying out. Alone, Ava sat on the wooden bench, staring at her reflection in the glass partition. The bruise on her cheek had darkened, but her eyes blazed with purpose. 23 years on the bench had taught her many things: patience, restraint, and the weight of justice. But this morning had reminded her of something far more primal: that justice without accountability was nothing but performance. Her phone buzzed, finally returned by court security. Dozens of messages blinked across the screen. Her clerk, Janet Morrison, had texted repeatedly. Judge Johnson, where are you? The Lewis hearing is about to start. Your Honor, please call. There are rumors something happened. Ava typed back, clear my afternoon calendar. Something more important just came up. Then she found a number she needed. Chief Judge Olivia Brown. Olivia, she said when the line connected. Ava, thank God. We heard something happened. Are you all right? I've been better, Ava replied. I need you to do something immediately. Call courthouse security. Have them preserve and copy all surveillance footage from this morning. Every angle, every camera. Store duplicates off-site. Done, Olivia said instantly. But Ava, what exactly happened? A police officer named Mason spent an hour in my courtroom testifying under oath about how he heroically subdued a dangerous criminal. Her voice hardened. That criminal was me. The line went silent. Then came Olivia's whisper. "Dear God, he didn't just arrest me." Ava continued. "He assaulted me, called me a filthy animal, told me I belonged in a cage. All of it on courthouse grounds." Olivia's tone changed to steel. "What do you need? FBI? State Attorney General?" "Not yet," Ava said. "For now, secure the footage. And Olivia, pull every case Officer Mason has testified in over the last 5 years. I want them all reviewed. Consider it done." "But Ava, you can't preside over this case yourself." "I won't," she replied softly. "But in 10 minutes, I'm walking back into that courtroom wearing my robes. And when I do, Officer Mason will finally learn what accountability feels like." Just then, Bailiff Clark returned, his arms full, her robes draped over one arm, a wooden box under the other. "Your robes, Your Honor, and your gavel." Ava unzipped the garment bag. The black robe shimmered faintly under the fluorescent light, the gold trim glinting like fire. She slipped them on slowly, reverently. The transformation was instant. Her posture straightened, her presence magnified. From the box, she lifted the gavel engraved with words she'd lived by. "Justice is blind, but she sees all." She turned to Clark. "When we return, announce me properly." "Yes, Your Honor." "How shall I announce?" "The Honorable Judge Ava Johnson, presiding." Clark nodded, throat tight. As Ava looked in the mirror one final time, the bruise on her cheek no longer looked like shame. It was a badge, a symbol. And as she prepared to step back into her own courtroom, the faint echo of Mason's words returned. "Filthy animals like you belong in cages." She smiled faintly. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. "All rise." Bailiff Clark's voice thundered across the chamber. Every head turned toward the side door as Judge Ava Johnson stepped in wearing her black robe with a thin thread of gold. The bruise on her cheek was visible under the lights, uncomfortable, undeniable, unforgettable. "Court is now in session," Clark announced, breath tight. "The Honorable Judge Ava Johnson, presiding." The room froze. Officer Mason, who'd been lounging with the casual arrogance of a man who expected to be applauded, went rigid. Judge Allen rose from the bench he had borrowed and moved aside with a pale nod. Sandra Taylor, the prosecutor, pressed her lips together like someone bracing for an earthquake. Ava took her seat. She picked up her gavel, then set it down softly, like a promise. "Officer Mason," she said evenly, "you may remain standing." He swallowed, color draining from his face. It was the first time he'd ever heard his own name sound like a sentence. "Approximately 2 hours ago," Ava continued, "you testified under oath. You claimed I trespassed. You claimed I resisted. You claimed your body camera malfunctioned. You claimed you used the minimum necessary force." A beat of silence. "Let's review the evidence." She tapped the tablet before her. On the screen behind the bench, courthouse security footage lit up in crystalline detail. The steps, the confrontation, the slap that cracked the morning, the hand at her throat, the cuffs biting into her wrists, the laughter in uniform. Her nameplate glinting just overhead on the bronze plaque, ignored by the man who called himself a protector. The room recoiled. A sound like a collective inhale swept across the gallery. "Do you see any verbal aggression from the defendant in this footage, Officer Mason?" Ava asked softly. "Any threats? Any attempt to flee?" Mason said nothing. His jaw worked. His eyes begged the floor to swallow him. Ava swiped to a second file. "This," she said, "is automatic cloud backup from your body camera, uploaded every 60 seconds regardless of alleged device failure. Please note the timestamp. The audio cut through the courtroom like glass. Look at this one, thinking she can just walk into my courthouse. People like her need to learn their place." A hush fell, so heavy it felt like gravity doubled. Ava let the words hang, then advanced the clip, his hand rising, her head snapping, the metallic rattle of cuffs. She paused on the frame where his fingers bruised her throat, the still image of arrogance meeting consequence. "Officers Davis and Walker," Ava continued, gaze shifting, "you both swore that Officer Mason handled the situation professionally. Having seen this, Would you like to amend your testimony? Davis and Walker stared at the floor. The silence was their only confession. Very well, Ava said. The record will reflect their silence. She turned back to Mason. You testified that my presence here today was suspicious. You speculated that I intended to impersonate court personnel based on the case files I carried. She lifted the gavel lightly, then set it down again. Officer Mason, I have presided over this courthouse for 23 years. Those files were mine. The courtroom you lied in was mine. The door you kept me from was mine. The justice you tried to counterfeit was mine. Her words were not loud. They did not need to be. In the recess of my direction, the chief judge has preserved every second of footage, every camera, every angle. The chain of custody is secure. Additionally, the county's automated body cam backup protocols confirm there was no device failure. Your device functioned as designed. Your honesty did not. Mason's hands trembled so hard the badge on his chest shivered. Ava turned to Sandra Taylor. Counselor, the state recommended charges against the defendant. Will the state be revising its position? Taylor's reply came thin and careful. Yes, Your Honor. The state withdraws. Noted. Ava drew a steady breath, then opened a thick manila folder. The court also received preliminary findings related to Officer Mason's complaint and arrest history. In 15 years, 47 formal complaints were filed against him. Most were closed as unsubstantiated. In arrests involving people of color, the court observed a documented increase in use of force to 63% and a dismissal rate of nearly 40% due to constitutional violations. The cost of related settlements exceeds $2 million paid by the public. The numbers didn't shout. They accused. Ava looked back to Mason. You told this courtroom that some people only understand authority when it's backed by force. Let me be clear. Authority is backed by the Constitution, not by cruelty. Power does not replace proof. A badge does not replace truth. He finally croaked, Your Honor, I didn't know who you were. She held his gaze. You didn't need to know who I was to know what was right. Ava rose from the bench and stepped forward, not as a victim, not even as a judge, but as the custodian of a promise larger than any uniform. Officer Mason, she said, based on the evidence presented, much of it from your own camera and your own mouth, this court finds probable cause for the following: felony assault, assault on a judicial officer, deprivation of rights under color of law, and perjury. His shoulders collapsed. The echo of his earlier swagger withered in the light. Bailiff Clark, Ava said, turning only slightly, take the defendant into custody. For the first time, the word defendant fit him. Clark stepped forward, hands confident and steady. The click of the cuffs was a quiet punctuation, one the court had waited years to hear. Mason's voice cracked. Your Honor, please. I'm sorry. Ava regarded him for a long moment, and for a heartbeat, pity flickered. Then she shook her head gently. Your apology arrived with the cameras, she said. Justice needed it to arrive with your conscience. She returned to the bench. We will recess to formalize the charges and specify referrals to federal authorities. In addition, this court orders an immediate review of every case in which Officer Mason has testified over the last 5 years. The public has paid the bill for his pattern. They now deserve a full accounting. The gavel fell once. It sounded like a door closing. What happened next did not feel like a single verdict. It felt like a turning. Whispers became headlines. Emails became subpoenas. Cases thought to be shelved were taken down and dusted off. Officers who had laughed quietly now signed statements loudly. Chief Judge Olivia Brown announced a comprehensive oversight program with independent monitors and mandatory camera redundancies that could not be malfunctioned away. Prosecutors recalibrated old assumptions. Defense attorneys reopened boxes with new hope. The community's tired shoulder lifted, an inch at first, then more. As the weeks passed, the footage circulated far beyond the city. Not because a judge was assaulted, but because a silence finally shattered. People said they watched it for the moment the robe returned to the room. But what they remembered was the bruise, not as a mark of shame, but but as a signature on an affidavit the whole city signed together. Back in chambers, late one evening, Ava stood alone. The robe hung on the stand, its gold thread catching the lamplight. On her desk lay a simple plaque, "Justice is blind, but she sees all." She touched the edge of it, then the spot on her cheek where the yellow had faded to a final, stubborn amber. She thought about the sidewalk, about how close contempt had come to rewriting reality, about how many times the same script had been performed without a witness, without a camera, without a judge who could say enough. Her phone chimed. A message from the young clerk who had sat in the back that day. Clerk starting law school in the fall. Civil rights track. "Thank you for the map." Ava smiled, small, tired, real. The next morning, she took the bench again. A different case. A different story. Same promise. Sentence day. The courtroom was full, but quiet, the kind of quiet that respects gravity. "Officer Mason," Ava said, voice calm, "for felony assault, assault on a judicial officer, deprivation of rights under color of law, and perjury. Considering the pattern established and the harm inflicted on individuals and public trust, this court imposes the maximum sentence permissible by law." No gasp. The moment didn't need one. It simply stood there, complete. "You told me, told all of us to know our place," Ava added softly. "Here is mine, to ensure that power answers to principle, and that dignity is not a privilege, but a right." The gavel came down. Not like thunder this time, like sunrise. Months later, the courthouse doors bore a new plaque, "Justice Johnson Federal Courthouse." The dedication speech was brief. The line people remembered was simpler still. "Justice delayed is a wound. Justice delivered is a scar that teaches." The city carried that scar, and it learned. Complaints were no longer discarded. They were investigated and explained in public. Training changed. Supervision changed. The community's reflex, once cynicism, became expectation. Expectation became insistence. Insistence became culture. And in a small cell far from those marble steps, a former officer stared at a concrete floor and realized the only place he had ruled was a story he had told himself. And that story was over. As for Ava Johnson, she kept walking the hall she had earned, quietly, resolutely, past the plaque with her name, past the bench that belonged to the law and to everyone it protects. She never forgot the day a hand closed on her throat. She never forgot the moment a camera opened every door she needed. Most of all, she never forgot the sound of the cuffs, the same sound a badge had once made when it latched a lie to her wrist and called it order. On certain mornings, when the sun hit the steps just right, she would slow at the top and look back at the sidewalk. Not to remember the fear, but to remember the lesson. Power is not what you hold. Power is what you answer to. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more thrilling, cinematic stories just like this one. Question for you. When have you seen power finally answer to principle? Share what happened and how it changed you in the comments below. Tell your story. Someone needs the map you carry.